mad from Sensi. Need coke and crack. Hit man a lot of some money. Man sell all them house and all spend up all the money. And a man a get mad and all a get naughty. Good sense in me now. Guide and protect way. It give the good melody voice in a being. It's a crowd of people listen to me. And Miss Olivia sing say.
Under me sense me, under me sense. 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 Whoa, see, whoa. One.
Lot of see.
When you come, when you come, when you come, when you come, come, when you come, when you come, when you come, when you come, come. When you come, when you come, when you come, when you come, come.
All ganja man in the house. Put up your legs, sir. All who smoke ganja now take cocaine and crack.
Now big up all the jungle river them in the place. I like to crow. I'll jump up massive. For real. This is not a bargain or a deal. Listen to the words of the first song. More time out there and young come to the place down with my lyrical tongue. I'll go.
The white man's got a gun. Come.
Jump around because you have the stamina and 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 kick out your foot because you got the stamina and jump around because you have the stamina and kick out your foot because you got the stamina and jump around because you have the stamina and jump around because you have the stamina and jump around because you have the stamina and kick out your foot because you got the stamina and
dog out, where they come from southwest, east or north. This is the roughest corner, coming up, take back no talk. Hear this, watch out. We are the roughest connect from out of South Park. Any boy test we have to drive a gun for. We are the roughest connect from out of South Park. Any boy test we have to drive a gun for. We are gonna dust out your blood. We are gonna shut out your blood. We are gonna dust out your blood. We are gonna shut out your blood. Watch out. We are gonna dust out your blood. We are gonna dust out your blood. We are gonna dust out your blood. Shut out, we are the roughest. We are gonna dust out your blood. We are gonna dust out your blood. We are gonna dust out your blood. We are gonna shut out, we are the roughest. We are the roughest. We are the roughest gunner from out of South Park. Any boy says we have to drive a gun for. We are the roughest gunner from out of South Park. Any boy says we have to drive a gun fast. Boys on that joke your right gets your heart on. The ragamuffin when no scared not laughed on. We face pain coming up beg no friend. This a dog got the bug up and we marked it. We are the roughest. We are the roughest.
Good morning, CarolinaCon. We hope everybody has been having a lot of fun this weekend. Well, I know we have. Thanks for tuning in for some excellent talks today. A short update on the CTF. No new challenges will be dropped, and the CTF will end at noon Eastern Time. Lastly, please check out shop.carolinacon.org. We have this year's limited swag bag pre-order up for sale, and pre-orders close once the con is over. We really appreciate your support. Our first talk of the day is Trifecta of Email Authentication by Denise. She will detail out how to prevent or avoid email spoofing with 3 email mechanisms that work together to avoid or at least eliminate frauds and cyber criminals from spoofing your domain or sender information. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Denise.
Hi everyone. So for today, we will be talking about the trifecta of email authentication. But before we start, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Denise, and I am currently living in the Philippines. And I've been in cybersecurity for almost a year now. I think the first year would be My anniversary in cyber is next month, if I can recall that right. So, quick background on how I got in cybersecurity. First year of pandemic, I was listening to this podcast on Spotify. It's called Darknet Diaries. I think most of you know about it. And after hearing all the episodes, one episode stuck with me, which is the Shamun by Chris Kobeka. And I got really inspired with her story. And after that, I got in touch with her and asked her the things I should do for me to be in cybersecurity. Then I took those steps and I took different courses, especially online, and the tutorials, because there's a lot of videos, tutorials that you can find that are related to cybersecurity. So I took those free videos, and after a year, I was still studying, and year 2021, I got a job in cyber. So someone took a chance on me. So if you are you are trying to get into cyber, do not give up, because this field is really interesting and sometimes it gets really frustrating. But again, don't give up. I think I had 200 job applications until one company or one person said, "Okay, let's get you in." But before cybersecurity, I was working in software testing. So I worked there for, I think, 7 to 8 years, if that's right. Then moved to cybersecurity. So, and another things about me. So I'm a spokesperson of my dog. So no one in our family is the spokesperson. It's only me and no one else. And a huge fan of drinking water. All right. Okay, let's get to the agenda. So for today, we will be talking about SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, why they matter, and the online resources you can use to check if these three things are implemented in your company. Right. First, we will start with SPF. So SPF is Sender Policy Framework. SPF was made to avoid forgery of sender's information or sender address. It's a TXT record that you publish in your DNS server. It also lets you configure IP addresses or third-party services that can send in your behalf. It lets you protect from cyber criminals trying to spoof your domain. And if you have this in place, it will likely lessen your email to be marked as a spam. So how does SPF work? For example, here I have Dave's company. So at Dave's company, I have published my SPF record in my DNS server. So example, someone sends an email outside my organization, and the recipient mail server will receive that email and will perform a check if this SPF record matches the one that I published in my DNS server. If it matches, the recipient will receive the email. And if it fails, what happens if it fails? So it will fall into spam, or it will be rejected. So what does SPF look like? So SPF record looks like this. So this is a TXT record, again, a TXT record that you publish in your DNS server. So we have here the V is equals to SPF1. This is the standard one. And you cannot change this, or else it won't be read. This is what everyone uses. And the IP4 is the list of IP addresses, again, that can send in behalf of your domain. And the third-party services, it could be the marketing services that your company use. And the dash already means reject all emails that do not match the SPF record. So there are other mechanisms when it comes to SPF. We'll discuss it in a bit. So here are the different mechanisms that you can use for your SPF. We have here the pass, soft fail, and hard fail. And the soft fail just means suspicious emails are not really rejected, but please put it in quarantine or spam folder. And the hard fail, again, this is the reject. This is the one that we discussed in the previous slide. So this means reject all emails that are not authorized to send in my organization's behalf. And the pass just means accept all emails even if that host is not allowed to send in behalf of us. So I do not really recommend this at all because you're just letting everyone to pretend to be you. So that's for SPF. Next one we have is the DKIM. So DKIM or DKIM, domain case identified mail. So this method also allows us to know if the message was altered during transit. So we all know in cybersecurity, we have the CIA triad. We have the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So domain keys identified mail fulfills the integrity part of the CIA triad. So it makes sure that the data has not been tampered or altered during transit and during if it's stored. Okay. So DKIM allows you to add a DKIM signature to your header. So how does DKIM work? It works like this. So for example, when you send an email, the server generates a hash encrypted with a private key and a corresponding public key that is published in your DNS server. So the private key is only available and accessible to you. And once the recipient mail server receives that email, the recipient mail server will look up the sender's public key that you publish in your DNS server. And the recipient mail server will verify if it matches the one that you publish. Once it does, it will use that key to decrypt the signature. And lastly, the receiving mail server will generate a hash based from the email received and will compare if the two hashes match. So you have the decrypted hash and the freshly generated hash from the email that you received. So you have two things here for DKIM. You verified that they are who they say they are, and you have verified that the message or the email was not altered during transit. Okay, so what does DKIM look like? DKIM looks like this. These are the required tags for DKIM signature, but there are also other optional tags you can use when you generate or when you include DKIM signature to your organization. So we have here the B is equals to 1. This is always the version. So again, once you change this, it won't be read. And the A means the algorithm used to generate the signature. So most organizations use this algorithm, the RSA SHA-256. And The D just means the domain of the sender. And the S is the select the record name to locate the public key in the DNS. And the H, this is the header fields, the list of header fields. And the BH is the body hash. And the B is this is the actual signature of the content for both headers and body. So for the deacon signature, this is the heart of it. All right. So we'll proceed to the DMARC. What is DMARC? So DMARC is domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance. So DMARC policy started appearing in the year of 2012, and it instructs the receiving mail server how they should process the emails from that domain should they fail the SPF and DKIM, or if SPF and DKIM are not aligned. And the email will undergo depending on the DMARC policy that you have set. So later we will discuss the policies for DMARC and how they can fit in your organization. So DMARC also has reports including on how your domain is being used. This also includes reports from malicious actors or cyber criminals pretending to be you. So these reports are generated every day. You can use them to, again, monitor how your domain is doing. And from there, you can check and set different policies that can suit your organization. Okay, next slide. All right, for this slide, so DMARC checks if the deacon signature or SPF record are aligned and if they match what you have published. So, for example, SPF record is failing, but the deacon signature is passed. What happens there? So it depends on your organization if you want them quarantined, none, or reject. So these are the policies for DMARC. So if they match, so if they are all aligned, the recipient will receive the email. And if not, again, the receiving mail server will decide what to do based on the DMARC policy that you have set. So DMARC policy looks like this. V is the version. Again, this is what everyone uses. This is the only version, I think, for now. And here, this is the policy. So you have quarantine, none, and reject. So for quarantine, if the DMARC authentication fails, it tells the receiving mail server to quarantine the email. The none, no action taken, the email will still be delivered, and it depends on how the receiving mail server filters this. For example, you do not have DMARC policy in place. It is up to the mailbox providers on what they should do. It depends on their filters. And for reject unauthorized emails. And the PCT here this is the percentage. You can set it to either 25%, 50, or 100. So percentage is 100. Here in this policy is 100% quarantine, none, and reject. And the RUA, this is where the reports are being sent. So this is again daily. So you'll see how your domain is being used. So I think as of now, you are wondering if your organization has this in place, or if your organization have set all these three things. And if not, we'll discuss the different tools checker you can use so that you can let your security team know that, hey, we do not use this. We do not have this in place. We do not have SPF record in place, DKIM and DMARC. And let them know what will happen if you do not have this in place. Okay. So I have here the 3 tools I use for SPF record generator and the DKIM record generator. So for example, I use the MX Toolbox for SPF record lookup. Example here, I have google.com. I check the google.com, and Google has the SPF in place, but it's in soft fail. Next, this is the SPF record generator. Again, you can let your security team know about this. Or you can check after this slide or after this presentation if your domain has this in place. And this is the DKIM record generator. You can use this for generating a DKIM signature for your organization. You can also use this for DKIM lookup. And here we have the DMARC record generator. So you just include the domain or host name, and you can check the DMARC record. Another good thing about MX Toolbox is they instruct you on how to create a DMARC record. So they have different set of questions here. How do you want mail that fails DMARC to be treated by recipient? This is again the quarantine or reject. It depends again on your organization. And the email addresses should aggregate DMARC reports sent to. And this is again the reports that's being generated every day. And here the suggestion of MX Toolbox. So they suggest on what you can include in your DMARC. So Google's current record is this one. So reject. And again, you can use this for your organization. Hopefully, you can tell your security team that, hey, we have these different tools that we can use for our organization to have our email from preventing of being spoofed. All right. Okay, I think that's it. So you can contact me here, and thank you everyone for watching this quick presentation. I hope you learned something from this talk and how these 3 methods work together to combat spoofing and protecting your domain. Okay, you can contact me here if you have questions. And here are the online resources I have used. So you can screenshot this slide and use this.
Thanks, Denise. Our next talk is Beyond Purple, Fostering Cross-Team Collaboration by Andrew Clinton. That'll happen at 11 o'clock.
the rhythm get it, and we could rock. Let the rhythm get it, and we could rock. Let the rhythm get it, and we could rock. Let the rhythm get it, and we could rock. Let the rhythm get it, and we could rock. Let the rhythm get it, and we could rock. Let the rhythm get it, and we could rock. Let the rhythm get it, and we could rock. And we could rock. And we could rock. And we could rock. And we could rock.
Drop the bass. 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 Drop the bass.
This one will make you jump a flip a dip a skip a don't you banana and orange pip. This one original. Rock the. This one original.
Our next talk is Beyond Purple, Fostering Cross-Team Collaboration by Andrew Clinton. Many companies find themselves with teams that become siloed. This often leads to constrained communications, filtered communications, or even loss of communication between these teams. In this talk, Andrew will detail real-world examples where collaboration and purple team concepts were used to break down communication barriers, share knowledge, and foster ongoing cooperation between a mix of technical and non-technical teams. And with that, I will turn it over.
Mine and don't necessarily reflect the thoughts of my employer. Standard disclaimer. Although obviously there's a lot of overlap there, given what we've done at the company. A little bit about myself. Andrew Clinton, 18 years in the greater IT space. The past 10 of that heavily focused in security roles. I've held a wide range of positions: Windows, Linux, security, sysadmin type positions, security engineering, pen tester, consultant, PCI QSA for a few years. I've worked as director of security for now 2 separate companies. Currently, I'm director of cybersecurity at Avion Healthcare. Hold too many certifications, some of which I'm happy with, some are all right. College dropout, and got lots of expensive hobbies that I don't really have time for. And the great example is right there at the bottom. And I want to talk a little bit about my team, because as we're kind of gearing up for how to go beyond purple, I think I need to talk about my team first. At Avion, I'm fortunate that both divisions, red and blue, report up to me. My team is kind of think is roughly divided into incident response and vulnerability management. It's a whole lot that gets fit into that incident response side. SIM engineering, security engineering, threat hunting, and of course incident response as well. Vulnerability management tends to encompass all of internal vulnerability scanning, external vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, as well as kind of facilitating and coordinating third-party assessments and third-party penetration testing. So definitely a strong mix of red and blue, but we're all on the same team. So heavy focus on collaboration, no silos within my group. Everyone's kind of involved, and everyone works together. It's a great scenario. We're on the same stand-up calls every morning. Our sprints are in alignment. We perform frequent purple team operations, and sometimes I think of purple team operation, it's almost on the scale of a pen test. It's a bigger thing. Where you kind of, red team does their stuff, and then they go back to blue and have a conversation about it. That's not really how we operate. Our purple team ops are kind of smaller in scale, but far more frequent, far more iterative. Say we've got a monthly cadence, but it goes beyond that. Lots of collaboration between both sides of that equation. Red team works with blue to validate security controls and kind of make recommendations, and blue team works with red. It's a great two-way relationship that has led us to a lot of quick maturity over the past couple of years. So beyond purple, what do we even mean by that? Oh, kind of baseline here. When I say purple, I really mean enhanced information sharing between red and blue teams. Okay, that collaboration that kind of shares perspectives and leads to increased effectiveness. If a defender has a better idea of what an attacker is doing, they're going to have a better understanding of how to defend against it, and vice versa. If an attacker understands how a defender is working, they can tune their attacks to tailor it to the environment, tailor it to the situation, and kind of drive those results further, maximizing effectiveness and getting the most out of that relationship. In this talk, I want to kind of cover taking that philosophy of sharing understanding, sharing information, and I want to expand it outside of security. I want to take it and talk about things we've done at Aviana, a couple of scenarios where we've worked with teams outside of security to increase communication, to do more knowledge transfers, and to break down communication barriers and drive more effective results and broader understanding. I want to say across the organization, but over some of the examples we'll step through are with some specific teams. So it's definitely a heavy focus for us. We want to make sure that everyone's talking, everyone's working with each other, and that we're kind of increasing understanding across the board. So I mean, in short, this is a talk about talking to people. I hope everyone is excited. A couple of key points I want to touch on. I think some of the real significant advantages, some of the things we've been able to achieve with kind of the actions we've taken across these kinds of cases. I'll be stepping through is showing new perspectives to people, kind of taking theory and turning into reality for some. Two-way knowledge transfers is a big one. Getting separate teams to talk and walk away with a deeper understanding is huge. Sometimes barriers go up, silos get established, and not much communication gets through. And then you've got independent teams doing their own thing, and that can be detrimental. So, and again, kind of breaking down barriers, encouraging communication. I think there's a short-term aspect of that, and then a long-term aspect of that. Sometimes you just get some friction that happens between teams, and they're not talking as much as they should. How can we work to approach that and encourage more communication so that we can avoid animosity or friction? And then, what can we do from a long-term communication standpoint? Because I think that's where real collaboration comes into play. So I wanted to acknowledge a couple of challenges. There's a lot of companies out there that struggle with cross-team collaboration. I've seen it firsthand. I've heard stories from other colleagues. I think one of the things that stands out to me a lot is siloed teams. You get teams working independently of each other. Everyone's got their own specialty, and so there's some natural tendency to move in the direction of silos. Kind of leave me alone. I'm working on my thing. But that can be detrimental. It kind of lead to echo chambers and not really understanding what other teams are doing. And another issue is communications being filtered through leadership. Sometimes senior leadership doesn't want engineering talking to engineering. Division of duties feeds into that, and then sometimes corporate culture just isn't really facilitating of open communication. And there's a lot of impacts to this as well. And this is kind of a short slide covering some high-level items, but the misalignment of goals. If we're not talking to each other, we don't know what each other's doing, and maybe I'm working on a project that you're working on, and if we're not talking to each other about it, we're not working towards the same goals in the same way, and that can decrease efficiency and kind of harm the overall product. Friction between teams. if you're not talking, not relating to your fellow coworkers, sometimes hostility can kind of start to grow. If it's just status updates, hey, you finished that thing for me yet? That can lead to animosity and friction. Lost communication isn't a big one. You're just not talking. I think that feeds into barriers as well. And then I already touched on outright hostility and stonewalling. Hey, security keeps pestering me, so I don't want to talk to them anymore. Yeah, they can go talk to my manager if they want to talk to me. As we kind of step into, before we get into the specific stories, I want to touch on the prerequisites. I think my current position, current company, we're very, very fortunate in our corporate culture, and our leadership has enabled this sort of scenario where we can have that stronger cross-team collaboration. But as touched on in a couple of previous slides, that's not always the case. So I think there's a few prerequisites I wanted to touch on here. You can't have any leadership barriers. You don't want any VPs or directors standing in the way of communication. Toxic personalities, I know we all experience it from time to time. We all run into that guy that's really challenging to work with. You get one too many of those, and it can damage communication all around. Another prerequisite is everyone's kind of working towards the same goal, whether they're aware of it or not. I think this is generally the situation. Working in a company, your goals tend to be aligned across the board, but it's definitely something you want to keep in mind. And then I think finally, the last prerequisite here is probably the most important, and it's time. A lot of us get overworked, overstressed. But the hard fact about trying to increase communication is you need more time for meetings and emails, and that's thrilling as that sounds. It's kind of part of the experience here. And maybe in short, this worked in my company. This has worked for us. Has worked really well for us. Happy to share these stories, but may not be perfect for every single scenario. So 4 stories I'll be kind of talking through today. This first one here is kind of a quick one. This picture is actually the only real picture in the slide deck. The rest have been swapped out for anonymity or kind of keeping confidential details away from the slide deck. But this is our senior pen tester conducting a wireless pen test, portion of it anyway, pointing a Yagi antenna at our corporate headquarters from way across the street. In context for this story, was, I believe it was Q1 of last year. We were performing an internal wireless pen test. There wasn't a whole lot going on there. Wireless network was pretty secure, not a lot of vulnerabilities. It was an interesting pen test, but not a lot of exciting things. So we did some initial testing, discovery, mapping, and kind of figuring out what access points were where, what wireless devices were where, what does consistency look like throughout the company. Did some preliminary attacks, but I think the real key thing that we decided to do here that had a huge impact was we scheduled a collaborative session with network engineering and the defensive security engineering team to do a collaborative kind of, I want to call it a workshop, but it was really more of a demo and screen share. And so we scheduled a meeting. I think it was maybe an hour long. Wasn't too bad, but scheduling the meeting with the networking team and the defensive security team allowed us to fire up screen shares and show what everybody was doing, show everybody's perspective for this particular thing. And the scenario where wireless attacks are being performed on our network, what does the wireless system look like? So it was just a off the internet screenshot of I think it's Cisco Meraki Air Marshal, showing rogue SSIDs. This is the networking team's perspective. This, when they log into their equipment, this is what they see. They know that they can detect rogue SSIDs, rogue access points. They know that they can detect attacks, and yeah, but yeah, it doesn't happen a whole lot. So most of the time, there's not much to look at here. But being able to have their system on the screen while the pen tester performing live attacks and generating info is kind of cool to see. See the board light up and see, okay, well, pen tester's doing this and I'm seeing that. It's a good experience. And then we're going to dip back into a little bit of purple here, because we also had the defensive security engineers on the line. And that kind of allowed us to watch event generation or alarms. You know, how does the system react? You know, if a rogue access point is stood up, do we actually get an event? How can we validate those controls? And then of course the pen testers were able to do the screen share as well. And I think this was a real eye-opening moment. This was really cool to see, and I think a lot of fun for the network engineering team. You know, because they've got their interface. They conceptually know that hey, their system detects rogue access points or you know, or those sorts of things. They potentially detect deauthorization attacks or you know, any malicious activity. The wireless intrusion detection system does quite a bit. But how are those attacks performed? How, you know, what does that look like? Most of them had never seen it, never touched it, never seen it performed in front of them. So this was a great experience. It wasn't pre-recorded. It was all live. It was, hey, I'm gonna fire up a rogue access point. You know, we're in the middle of the corporate office. Tell me what the wireless system does. And so it's kind of an eye-opening moment here. It changed theory into reality for the network engineering team. We get a lot of great questions throughout the session. Just kind of talking about how attacks are performed, you know, what we should look out for, and it was a good conversation overall. Story two. In this kind of scenario, we had an internal web application with multiple vulnerabilities. Standard pen test discovered them. Remediation was pretty quickly queued up, and development started working on it. But one thing we were a little bit concerned about was it's always a business impact. We weren't getting any resistance to deploying remediation or updating the application. We were working closely with the development team and making good progress. But we knew that the business owners of the application and the users of the application were going to be impacted, a smaller group of internal users. And we kind of wanted to show them what was going on and why we were doing what we were doing. So yeah, we scheduled another kind of live demo. It was a live interactive session, maybe 30, 45 minutes. It was pretty quick. And we pulled up the report and we stepped through the findings. And this was really illuminating. And again, changing kind of theory into reality. And the business owners understand that, hey, there's vulnerabilities in the application and they need to be fixed, but it's completely different to see it. And so in this scenario, our senior pen tester was able to our senior pen tester, sorry for the pause here. Sorry. Technical difficulties on my end. So in this scenario, our senior pen tester was able to step through the findings and really demonstrate what the results of what could be done with these issues. And so again, kind of changing that theory into reality. It's one thing to be told that there's vulnerabilities on your web application, but it's another thing to see a pen tester fire up SQL map and dump sensitive records right there in front of your eyes. And this was a technical demonstration for non-technical business leadership, but it still had a substantial impact. It really kind of showed them, hey, this is why we're doing this. This is why we go through these efforts. This is why we test for vulnerabilities and why we're working towards remediation. This is why your web application is going to be down for a day or two as we're pushing out upgrades. And story number 3 here, senior engineering meetings. Last year, we kind of had a pretty substantial workload on both the security and the infrastructure side, as we were working through some heavy-handed compliance goals across the board. It was there's a lot of work being done, and there was a lot of projects that were somewhat intertwined. And in this particular situation that kind of spawned this discussion was we had security engineering waiting on infrastructure to complete some of their projects, and we had infrastructure waiting on security to complete some of their projects. And in a remote work environment, what that kind of translates to is the security agile sprint is a week long. The infrastructure agile sprint is 2 weeks long. And so once a week, security emails infrastructure and says, "Hey, you finished that thing for me yet?" And so twice throughout their sprint cycle, infrastructure is getting nuisance emails, and then vice versa is somewhat true as well. The infrastructure teams look into security. Hey, did you finish this thing yet? Did you finish those dashboards in the SimForest yet? And when that's all the communication that's happening, friction starts to build up. Yeah, no, I'm waiting on so and so. It's been weeks. It's been weeks. And then I'm waiting on him to do this thing for me, and he keeps pestering me about this other thing. And it really was a breakdown of communication. It was, everyone had their heavy workloads, and so they're kind of focusing on their own work and not understanding the perspective of the other individual, and not necessarily blaming anyone for this scenario. It's just kind of an emergent property of kind of, hey, we all had a lot of work, and we're all kind of pushing each other to, try to get to the next step. So the answer was pretty obvious. We needed to increase the communication between some of these guys. So we established a standing meeting between infrastructure and security engineering, and there wasn't a set. There's no set agenda. There's no set goal. It's a bi-weekly cadence. Somewhat in alignment with agile sprints, because that kind of lines up the projects and updates and keeping PMs happy. But no managers, just senior engineers. Senior engineers know how to talk to senior engineers. I don't need to be involved here. These guys are all working towards the same goals, and they just need to, chat and make sure that they're not kind of make sure that the communication between these teams is more than just status updates and hey, you finished that thing for me yet? So this is actually an ongoing standing meeting. I think we're still getting fantastic results out of it. Even if it's just encouraging communication between the teams. So they get into these bi-weekly meetings, and I think sometimes there's a little bit of an agenda. There's projects on the board that need to be discussed. Sometimes I think the conversation is more casual. Hey, what are you working on this week? We're all technical. Both sides of engineering focus on technical tasks. Everything's interesting. What's the cool project that's in the pipeline? But it also kind of gives them an opportunity to talk about what's on the horizon. What are we going to be working on in a couple of months? Or what are the ideas we're playing around with? It's helped us get ahead of some challenges, where security may be rolling out a project that's going to have a more substantial infrastructure impact. We need to deploy a new IDS system, and that's gonna take 3 server deployments. Well, that's an impact on infrastructure. We can discuss it in these meetings so that it's on their radar as soon as possible, and there's some preliminary discussion. it kind of eases some of those tensions and increases efficiency overall. And then, of course, how can we help each other out? There's been some great examples between these two teams over the past couple of years. There's tools that they use, that infrastructure uses, that can help us, and there's tools that security uses that can help infrastructure. And where is that overlap, and how can we increase that collaboration? And I think another point I kind of wanted to make here, and with the first two scenarios, it's kind of standoff or standalone scenarios, one-off meetings. This is a cadence, and I think as we kind of talk through implementing these, or having these meetings, you're having a long-term effect. You're opening up communication. You're encouraging more communication. So this one in particular, this biweekly cadence is a big one. It kind of gives that conversation space. But even in the previous two, you're encouraging ongoing communication, even if it's just a one-off meeting, with the business owners and users of an application. Suddenly they know security exists, and they know what security does. And so they're going to be more likely to pick up the phone, send that email, and ask questions later on. Hey, you guys did that session 3 months ago. Can we do another one? Because I want to better understand what's going on over here, or can we talk through some things, or we just implemented multi-factor on this application. Why? It might be some really valid questions from users that want to make sure that security has an open door, and that people are comfortable approaching us, and kind of we want to foster that long-term communication so that we can collaborate with all the different teams across the business, and have a more effective result. And this is a bigger story, and kind of my favorite. Saved it for last. Pen testing and development integration. So last year we had an external party do a pen test for one of our applications, one of our internal applications, and they came back with, I want to say it was an overwhelming amount of findings, but there was plenty of findings. Some of them were fairly complex, and some of the complexity here had to deal with legacy code issues, standard challenges that a lot of us run into. We were pretty quickly, we established resources and budget, and secured the budget and resources required for remediation, and tied that to a timeline. Somewhat an aggressive timeline. There's a variety of risks in play with the application, but really we just kind of wanted to make sure that we processed this hardy list of vulnerabilities in an effective manner. So how do we do that? We've got some complex vulnerabilities that are a little difficult to explain. Understanding how they interact with back-end code is a challenge, because legacy code that's not necessarily being not necessarily the most exercised by the current development team. Now, how do we bridge some of these knowledge gaps, and make sure that the developers understand the attacks, understand the security implications and those scenarios, and how do we queue up effective remediation and work in a reasonable timeline so we can meet the deadline and move on to other projects. Well, I think let's have the pen testers and devs hang out a lot. So stepping into the remediation process, and single slide covering months worth of work. After discussions with the development teams and leadership, and kind of the best way to approach this, we integrated the pen testing team into the development teams. And so the pen testers joined the daily stand-ups and weekly sprint planning from development teams, and pen testers joined the development Slack channels, because that's where most of the development communication was going on. And I don't want to understate the impact here. We've got several development teams, each with their own set of stand-ups and sprint planning. That's a huge burden for a short list of pen testers. It's a lot of new meetings every single day. But the team did a great job, and this really threw open the fire hose in terms of communication between the teams. The pen testers were heavily involved, understanding how things are being prioritized, what fixes are being worked on. There's active communication between developers and pen testers to talk about, hey, we're looking at implementing this as a fix for this vulnerability. What do you guys think about that? Is that going to be effective? There's a lot of great discussion. So there's kind of smaller fixes for more spot issues, and then there were certain scenarios where we had recurring issues throughout the application, and we needed to discuss larger fixes that were broader. And I think that this relationship really helped facilitate those conversations where we could talk about, do we is not a specific example, but do we run through the full list of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities and remediate those inputs one by one, or do we try to find a broader approach that takes care of everything in one fell swoop? And there was a lot of great discussions in this time frame about the pros and cons of different types of remediation, and how do we approach it. And I think it was illuminating to the development teams how the pen testers operated, and kind of help the development teams understand, well, if you fix it this way, we can still get around the fix, versus if you fix it that way, that's far more robust and is going to keep me from getting back in. And vice versa. This relationship really helped the pen testers gain deeper understanding. We could talk about white box testing, but this kind of goes beyond white box testing, because it's active communication with the developers maintaining the code. So there's scenarios where the pen tester is going to have questions. If I initiate this function and drop this input in there, what happens on the back end? And they had a direct line of communication into the teams that understood the back end functionality and what the implications of it would be. But to kind of bringing this portion to a close, that open communication really helped streamline remediation across the board. It was kind of cool watching, especially the tail end, as we're kind of getting into that remediation validation phase. If there's so much conversation happening on the front end before remediations are designed and implemented, well, then by the time they're implemented, the pen testers already had eyes on it. We're confident in the results, and that final validation step is just like almost instantaneous. Yeah, no, we'll run the check again, but we know that it's the validation is going to be sound. And it was really kind of cool watching the final couple of months of this project, and we're just knocking out validation left and right. But again, constant communication between the teams really opened this up and kind of helped streamline all these processes, give us a much more robust remediation end result, and really kind of fostered the relationship between those teams. That's kind of brings me to my next slide. More buzzword synergy here, but that open two-way communication still exists. That project in particular was a big one, but it's come to a close. We wrapped it up at the end of last year, but the development team, the security team, they still talk all the time. We'll have developers proactively reaching out to security, again, via Slack, via other messaging, via emails. Hey, throw a meeting on the calendar. Hey, we're about to do this. Let's talk through it real quick. Make sure that we're doing this right, and that we've considered the attacker's perspective. And then on the opposite side, Yeah, our pen testers, part of the vulnerability management team, and part of that is static and dynamic code analysis, which kind of, it's ongoing. And having that direct line, not just into the development teams, but to the developers really helps with that. Hey, I ran a static code analysis on this older application, and we found static credentials in this file. What's up with that? And a developer in Slack in 2 seconds. Oh yeah, no, that code's no longer in use. I'll tag it in the next sprint just to delete the file. We found situations like that. So it's kind of this open communication has really helped us out long term in breaking down those barriers, establishing that two-way communication, and getting quick, effective results. So I ran through this a little more quickly than I was expecting, but kind of in conclusion, kind of touching on my 4 key points here again, there's a lot of benefit to kind of fostering this cross-team collaboration, and either having standalone meetings or standing meetings, or integrating teams within other teams to kind of facilitate more communication. You can really show new perspectives. You can kind of take that theory into reality. So with the first 2 examples, pretty confident the network team had never seen the aircrack suite, live and running in front of them before. They conceptually understood what the attacks were, but never seen them perform. So it was an eye-opening experience to see, not only, hey, these are the attacks being performed, but these are the results. This is how my system reacts, and dang, the pen tester can do that quick. A similar situation in the second scenario, talking to the business owners of the application. Again, hey, we have these vulnerabilities. We need them fixed. Okay, cool. You guys fix them. But we want to take the time and show, hey, this is why we're fixing these vulnerabilities. This is the impact of some of these web application vulnerabilities, and this is how we dump sensitive data, or this is how we do cross-site scripting and hijack credentials, or this is why session handling is important, because it has this impact. And if you have somebody who normally works with sensitive data and they think that it's in a confined spot, and then you show them a SQL injection attack that bypasses all the controls and dumps the contents of the database, and suddenly all that information that they thought was secure is right there on the screen. It can really illuminate the why. Why are we pushing these security initiatives, and how does that relate to them as the user of the application, or the business owner of the application. And then stepping into the security engineering, or the senior engineering meetings, as well as the development and security integration. Breaking down barriers and encouraging communication is huge. Kind of reached a point where teams are proactively reaching out to each other. Communication is streamlined, and it's fun, man. Like, we're all technical. We're all interested in the work that's being done, and so it's easy to talk to each other once the communication starts happening. And it's exciting because we all get to learn, and that's I think that makes everybody excited about things. It kind of helps us queue up new projects, helps us make effective use of everybody's time, and I think everybody gets to grow and learn throughout the whole process. All right, so that's my talk about talking to people. I hope I still have a few of you. Thank you for joining me today. It's been a pleasure here at CarolinaCon. You guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thanks, Andrew. Great talk. In a minute, we are going to be live streaming community answers and questions, like a Q&A, about the CTF, CarolinaCon, and this year's badge while building the badge itself. Please direct questions to the general chat. And just as a reminder, the CTF ends at noon. When the stream is over, we will announce the CTF winners live.
Let's see. Hey, can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and send some messages stating that we're getting started with this. Let's see. All right, let me know when the video is going to come on the stream. Hey, Wes, I'm not seeing the video on the stream yet. Oh. Awesome. All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy CarolinaCon. Happy Sunday. This is Matt. I am here with Wonky. We have been the designers for the past 3 CarolinaCon badges. We started with CarolinaCon 15. We made one for 16, but we didn't get to use it with the outbreak of the pandemic. We made the Hack the Pig badge last year for the first CarolinaCon online. And then we have designed this badge here. This is the CarolinaCon Online 2 badge. Let's see. We have a 555 timer right here for the blinking LED and the associated capacitor and resistors. We're going to try and have it so that the Discord general chat is on our screen here, so we can also field any questions about the CTF, about the badge itself, CarolinaCon, anything like that. We're happy to go ahead and discuss. So I'm just setting up my camera real quick. All right, sweet. Everything is set up. We are ready to begin. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we came up with the design for this badge. So this year we had the theme of satellites, and we got some art commissioned for a satellite logo lit like this with some leaves growing on it. So once we had the logo made, we always start our process by starting in a vector program called Inkscape, where we take the logo that the artist gives it and we change it into the associated layers. So if you think of this PCB, it's actually about, I think, 7 layers if you really think about it. On the outermost layer, there is this solder mask, that is this blue color you see here. Then beneath that is copper, which appears as this silver, because I believe they put, what is the metal they put on that, Mike? I forget what that's called. Something. And then in the middle, there is fiberglass, which is what makes the badge so sturdy. And then repeat the process on the other side, copper, and then solder mask again. So to actually make this exposed copper here appear, we have to first tell the program, hey, we want there to be copper on all the areas here. And then we have to tell it, hey, we don't want there to be solder mask, because by default, it will put solder mask everywhere. And that's how we're able to get the exposed copper for the art on the front here. On the back, it's a bit simpler because this is where we have all the traces for the actual circuit. And because we don't want to mess up the art on the front. Yeah, so in Inkscape, once we have the art and everything set up, we then use a plugin called SVG Descension, which will then export this into a file that KiCad or KiCad, depending on who you ask, can read. And we actually go in with all the footprints and everything it has to actually wire up the circuit itself. And that's where we get everything on the back. This year, Wonky did all the handwriting on the back. I really love this idea. I think it's super, super unique. So I'm really happy with how that came out. All right, without further ado, we are going to go ahead and start soldering the badge. Again, I am looking at the general chat right now. So if anyone has any questions about the badge, the CTF, anything at all, we can go ahead and answer that. I think starting at around noon, we're going to go over the winner of the CTF, some closing remarks, things like that. But let's go ahead and get started. So I am heating up my soldering iron now and turning on my little DIY fume extractor. There we go. All right. So the very first piece we're going to solder in is the IC socket for the 555 timer. Is dip 8 for anyone that's familiar, because there are 8 little holes there, and dip because it is a through hole component. It doesn't just sit on top of the PCB, it goes all the way in. So we just place it in like that, and then we are ready to start soldering. Let me get my iron primed. I'm basically just putting a little bit of solder on the iron to kind of warm it up to get things ready, and then I'll go ahead and clean it off. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just solder one of the pads first, just to get things started, because I want to make sure that the socket is soldered flat into the PCB. If you can see, it's at a little bit of an angle right now. And so what I'm just going to do is I'm going to push that with my thumb while heating up the one pad that we have right there to kind of flat. There we go, to get that centered nice in position. All right. And now I'll just solder the remaining pins. I'm at a bit of a weird angle with the camera here, so forgive me if this looks a little bit strange. Some initial ideas for this badge were very ambitious. We were talking about running Kubernetes on this thing by getting some Wi-Fi enabled chips. It was some pretty crazy stuff for the design process at first. Unfortunately, with the supply chain as it is right now, we wanted to make sure we could use parts that were easy to acquire. And in this situation, all of these are. So if anyone does go to shop.carolinacon.org, you can purchase our merch bundle this year. That comes with a shirt, a sticker, a shot glass, and one of these badges with all of the parts you need to go ahead and make your own. It is a great way to support the con. We really appreciate it. That's how we get the money to run the servers for the CTF and handle all the other expenses that we have running it. So that socket is in there. That's good. The next thing we're going to do is solder in the 3 resistors. So when you use a 555 timer like this, the 2 resistor values, specifically these 2 right here, are the ones that determine how quickly the timer is going to blink. So in this case, I wanted a long, slow blink, 1 second on, 1 second off. And I managed to cheese it by using a 220 and a 10K. Those are rounded values. It's very funny because after I ordered the parts for this, I saw a tweet where someone said, oh yeah, if you use rounded resistor values like this, it means you didn't do the math. And I did not do the math. I wung it and it worked. So they absolutely called me on that. And let's see. So right now I'm just getting that resistor in place. I'm going to add the next 220 ohm resistor here. I'll show off. I have one of our black Uber badges right here. Those are going to be given away as prizes. I'm not entirely sure yet. We think the CTF winner is going to get one in addition to our main CTF prize of that meteorite, that real meteorite. Let's see, and now we're gonna add the last resistor. Again, if anyone has any questions, you can go into the general chat on our Discord or our Matrix server. Those are both synced together. And I'm happy to answer that if anyone has any questions about the badge, the CTF, or anything else that's going on before we announce the CTF winners coming up. All right, trying to get that in there, and it should be good to go. Both Wonky and I, we are not electrical engineers by trade. This is all self-taught. It's all just out of our own desire to work with this stuff. So it's always very interesting seeing our approach to it and the official approach whenever we come across it. But now that those resistors in place, I can just add a little bit of solder to the back of each pad here. And look at that. Those are some good connections. Right. All right. You guys can take a look. Got good connections there. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut those off. I don't have my good snips for this, so I have to kind of use wire strippers to do it awkwardly. So forgive me if this isn't the prettiest trimming. Yeah, can't get those as short as I really want them to be, but that's fine. We'll just bend them over for now. And then when I do get my better snips at home, I can go ahead and cut these shorter. What? Oh my gosh, thank you. So ask and you shall receive. So now I've got the good snips. Here we go. Look at that. All right. So now we can see all those resistors are wired up right there. We try and have them blend in with the art this year. All right. The next piece we are going to solder in is the LED. This is polarized, so you can always tell the negative end of an LED by looking at the shorter bit of wire. I'm actually not sure what that's called, but the shorter one is always negative. So we can just insert that into the PCB right here. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the IC socket, where I'm just going to solder one of the legs, and then I'm going to straighten it out with my finger before I solder the other leg. There we go. Just enough solder in there. And I'll show you what I'm doing if I can here. I'm just heating up that little bit, and then with my thumb, I'm going in, I'm straightening it out. There we go. Now the LED is mostly not crooked. It's still a little crooked there. And that's what I'm going to try and fix that. There we go. That's about right. And now just to finish off those pads right there. There we go. I always tell people, don't be afraid to put the iron right on the PCB. You want to heat up the pad so the solder flows right to it. You don't want to worry about, trying to hot glue dribble the solder onto the circuit. That's never going to work to form a good connection. All right, let's go ahead and get the capacitor. This is 120 microfarads. Picking capacitors is tricky because there's a million different kinds, and it's always fun to try and figure out which one is the best one for this particular project, from the price, from the actual size, to constraints on, is this component in stock, and will we be able to get it in time for the con, all of that fun stuff. And the other thing is they really absorb heat. I had to leave the iron on that for a bit more than usual just because they will suck up so much of the heat and take away the heat from the actual PCB where we need it to be. But looking at that, that's soldered on great. So I can get the other leg there. Capacitors also polarized, so we had to use the shorter leg here and the negative spot on the PCB. There we go. So that looks pretty good to me. Go ahead and trim that now. Okay. All right, things are coming along well. We are almost done. The last piece we have is the battery pack. So let me go ahead and get that. AA batteries are a little bit overkill for this project. They'll power this one LED for, I think it's a week or so. It's a very long time. This is the double-sided adhesive that we use to adhere the battery pack to the PCB. We bought this last year for the CarolinaCon online badge for $10, and this is still how much we have left. We expect to be able to use this for many years to come. And in the process, we had to learn the official 3M data sheets and levels for adhesiveness, because the stuff we bought originally wasn't sticky enough. And so we had to like go through their process to find out what is their stickiest roll, and this is it. All right, so I am just putting the double-sided adhesive on the back of the battery bank, removing this. Actually, I'm going to cut the power wires to length before I peel off the adhesive and stick it. So in this case, the wires are very short for this badge. That's because we wanted to make this badge a little bit smaller than usual. So here, I'm going to cut the wire to length and just remove just a smidge of this sheathing to expose the wires. Whenever you have this multi-threaded wire like this, I really don't want to cut off too much because you can easily fray in a lot of situations. All right. Now I'm just going to go ahead and twist the ends here and then bend them down so they will stay in place in the PCB when I want to solder them. And now I will remove the adhesive backing. Go ahead and center this onto the badge itself. Perfect. That's not going anywhere. And I left a little bit of extra room for these wires. That might make it a little bit tricky to try and solder them in place here. But let me go ahead and bend them and get those ready to solder right now. There we go. That can work. That's going to stay in place. All right, let me go ahead and solder that in place. Here's the one component where we're going to burn the sheathing on the wire just a little bit. It's pretty much impossible not to, but that's okay. That's okay. There we go. We got a pretty good solder connection there. All right, now repeat the process for the black wire. Oh, it's being a little bit tricky. It doesn't want to stay in. Well, that's fine. That's fine. Maybe I just convince it a little bit. A little bit of convincing will get it there. Let's see. There we go. A little bit of convincing for my other hand. There we go. Now, just to finish up that joint. There we go. All right, that's not a bad connection. Not the worst I've ever seen. Let me go ahead and cap that off on this side. Perfect. All right, and with that, we have fully assembled this year's badge. Let's go ahead and pop in a battery and give it a try. So first, let me get the last component, the 555 timer. There's a circular notch in the top of this one. We want to line that up so it's facing up on the badge. All right, that goes in the socket just like so. And now I've got some spare AAA batteries. Hey, it worked on the first try. We can now see the antenna on the side light here is blinking that nice steady red every 1 second. All right, just like that. This year's badge is pretty simple to assemble. That took, what was that, less than 20 minutes to get that done. And everything is working great. Okay. Well, thank you very much for listening. Again, badge is made by myself, Matt, and Wonky. We're very happy to answer any questions. If anyone has any or any other discussion, feel free to message us on Discord or Matrix. But if not, thank you so much. We will get back to you with the CTF winners and our closing remarks and everything else coming very soon.
Special dedication to all the woman. Follow me now, master, me say follow me now. Yeah, you man. Special dedication.
Hey everyone, so the CTF just wrapped up about 3 minutes ago. It looks like SecureSec is in first place with 2,238 points. SecureSec team will be the winner of a meteorite and one of our black badges that Matt was just showing off in the live stream. And then in second place we have Oh the Places You'll Pwn with 1,700 points. And in third we have Nilbensec with 1,200 points. We had some questions about write-ups and solutions. We're going to figure out the best format to do that in. Probably going to add a channel in the Discord and Matrix where you can dump any write-ups you have. And as for questions at this point, if there's any spoilers or anything you want to talk about, go ahead and ask it in the CTF channel. And beyond that, are there closing remarks?
Thanks to everybody who wrote challenges this year and to all the speakers. We really appreciate, what you've done. You've made CarolinaCon what it is. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Drop